Good evening. My name is Jillian McDonald. Welcome to the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo Virtual Community Town Hall. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We know a lot of our neighbors, friends, and loved ones are going through many challenges right now as we recover from this unprecedented flood. Our panelists are here to answer questions from residents regarding flood recovery. On the line tonight, we have Mayor Don Scott, Scott Davis, the RMWB's Director of Emergency Management, Jamie Doyle, the municipality's Chief Administrative Officer, Matthew Huff, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Chris Booth, Manager of Planning and Development, Greg Wolf, Chief Building Safety Codes Officer, Kevin Weidlich, the President and CEO of Wood Buffalo Economic Development Corporation, from the Insurance Bureau of Canada, Vice President Western, Rob Dupree, Jen McManus, VP, Canadian Red Cross for Alberta and Northwest Territories, and from Service Alberta, Senior Investigator Julie Matthews. If you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists, hit *3 on your phone and you will be directed to an operator who will take your question. We encourage you to ask questions live on the line. However, if you aren't comfortable, we can read them for you. Mayor Don Scott is going to have some opening remarks, followed by Jamie Doyle and Kevin Weidlich. Now I would like to turn the floor over to Mayor Don Scott.
Thanks very much, and hello, everyone. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 8 and unceded Métis territory for this call. And I do have some disappointing news. I know that I had told many of you that I believed Alberta Health Services, AHS, would be participating in tonight's call, but apparently nobody in their bureaucracy could take an hour out of their time to participate. So unfortunately, they will not be participating. So that's Alberta Health Services. So if you have a COVID-related question, we will do our best to answer it, but AHS chose not to participate tonight. So with that said, I just want to commend the community and thank everybody who has gone down there to help our downtown. A lot of friends and family have shown up, and it's been amazing to see. We're one damn tough town, but it's because of people like you have shown up and helped your neighbors, and I'm certainly grateful for it. So keep the volunteerism going. I want to thank the Red Cross again. They're here with us tonight, and if anyone has questions for them. Samaritan's Purse is also in town, and they are ready to help, and they need volunteers. So if you are interested in volunteering, no background required. They were telling me stories about how they've had people who are 85 and 86 just show up, and they can put them straight to work, and they can get a lot done. Their number is 1-833-738-7743. And the volunteers, they just need to show up at the Fort City Church between 7:30 a.m. and 7:40 a.m. So please help out where you can, everyone, and thanks to all those who have.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and our Chief Administrative Officer, Jamie Doyle.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Mayor Scott. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for an update this evening on the community's flood recovery efforts. I'd like to get started by recognizing the community partners that have joined us tonight on this call, and of course, everyone on the ground working around the clock to get people home and started on the recovery process. This time last week, every evacuation order except for Grayling Terrace was still in effect, and ice jams were still causing severe flooding. I'd like to take this opportunity to retroactively declare a river break on Saturday, May 2nd. Since this date, approximately 9,000 residents have returned home, and 2,500 people continue to stay in interim lodging. Yesterday, we announced these temporary accommodations have been extended for residents whose homes are not safe to occupy, do not have utilities restored, or do not have access to their multifamily homes. We also formally requested Disaster Recovery Program, or DRP, funding to be urgently provided to support impacted residents and businesses. We've temporarily waived all disposal fees at the municipal landfill, as well as community development and safety code permitting fees, and will be reducing water billing fees for homes impacted by boil water advisory. We continue to innovate, brainstorm, and explore options to accelerate the flood recovery process. There is a tremendous amount of work left to do as we develop our flood recovery plan, but the transition from emergency to recovery is underway. There is a dedicated team at the RECC, the Regional Emergency Coordination Center, that will continue working on recovery efforts for the foreseeable future. This team consists of RMWB employees, provincial and industry representatives, community partners, and of course the Canadian Red Cross. Community members impacted by flood should register directly with the Red Cross by calling 1-800-863-6582. If you are in a unique circumstance and need further assistance, please explain your situation when you call. These may be challenging times, but no one should be navigating through these alone. There are support resources and guides on reentry, cleaning instructions, and other helpful information available at rmwb.ca/recovery. This will be a step-by-step process, but ultimately we will get through this together as a community, as we have done before. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And just a reminder, if you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists, please hit *3 on your phone. Up next, Kevin Weidleck has some opening remarks. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Jill. As I previously mentioned in a number of public fora, economic development is a team sport, and most definitely economic recovery and recovery is a team sport. And with that in mind, it takes all of us to really get through this, and together we'll be able to do so. I'm pleased to share with the community that we've launched rebuildlocalymm.com, rebuildlocalymm.com, and that's a portal website that lists all of the local businesses and contractors that are able to provide support to flood mitigation efforts. In other words, are able to do the work with insurance companies to undertake the mitigation. This website's launched in collaboration with our community partners, and I'm delighted to share with the community that virtually everybody involved has come together quickly. So that includes NABA, the Northeast Alberta Aboriginal Business Association, Fort McMurray Construction Association, the Fort McMurray Chamber of Commerce, BUILD, and of course our organization, the Buffalo Economic Development. So that's an example of the collaboration. There are many other examples that are underway behind the scenes as well. Several weeks ago, it seems like an eternity, we launched the Business Recovery Task Force, an advisory body for Wood Buffalo Economic Development. Because events have happened so quickly, the task force took the initiative to expand our mandate. We've actually done so twice. The first was to expand into the immediate measures that could be undertaken because of COVID. And then, of course, with the flood, the task force, and we took it upon ourselves to expand our mandate to include the measures and recommendations that we could undertake to deal with the flood and recovery. So those initiatives were decided upon last week, and we've fleshed out some recommendations. I have 4 of them, which I'll be sharing with Council at the upcoming Council meeting on May 12th. In the meantime, also, we are developing and building out a portal for business recovery resources. This is the place where if businesses would like to know what help is available to them, there's a touch point with us in the community. This portal will be launched on May 15th. And in the meantime, if there are questions, the businesses can ask us directly at 1-855-923-2338. That's 1-855-923-2338, or an email to info@choosewoodbuffalo.ca. And finally, I just want to close on reminding everyone that COVID-19 remains a threat. So please practice physical distancing, follow public health orders. It's the fastest way for our region to recover. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Before we get into our question queue, again, if you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists, please hit *3 on your phone, and we'll get to your important questions. Before we get started, Jen McManus from Canadian Red Cross would also like to say a few words.
Thanks, Jill. Starting tomorrow, Friday, May 8th, the Canadian Red Cross will be providing $600 per household in Fort McMurray and the surrounding area that was under a mandatory evacuation order due to recent flooding. People who registered with the Canadian Red Cross and were under mandatory evacuation from their primary residence in Fort McMurray area due to flooding will receive a one-time payment per household to help meet their reentry needs, which may include food, laundry supplies, cleaning supplies, transportation, and personal items. The reentry financial assistance provided by the Canadian Red Cross is separate from the assistance provided through current government relief programs. Starting tomorrow and over the next few days, most of the funds will be distributed automatically by electronic funds transfer to those who have already provided an email address to us and their identification has been validated by the Red Cross team. Those who may still need to validate their ID or do not have access to electronic banking services or EFTs will receive a phone call over the next few days from the Canadian Red Cross to come to the Franklin Avenue office here in Fort McMurray to do an identification validation. Please note, when the Red Cross calls, please wait until we give you your registration number. If we do not give a registration number, please do not give out personal information for your own protection. If in doubt, please call us back at 1-800-863-6582, and our hours are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. People who receive a phone call from the Canadian Red Cross can come to the Franklin Avenue office for identification validation and will be asked to provide picture identification. Other acceptable ID will be outlined in the phone call that you receive from the Canadian Red Cross, such as a passport, a driver's license, etc. We're really proud to be here with Mayor Scott and team, and from the Canadian Red Cross, thank you, and be patient. In a COVID-19 environment, we are also doing as much by virtual support as possible. Thank you.
That's Mayor Scott again. On behalf of the entire community, we want to thank the Red Cross for that support. The Red Cross, every time we've been in crisis, and there's been a few challenges this community's faced, the Red Cross has been there right at our side. So thank you so very much for everything the Red Cross has done on behalf of our entire community, and in particular all those who are impacted and will benefit from these funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and thank you so much, Jen. I think that's great positive news to kick off tonight's town hall. So again, we want to hear your important questions, so please press *3 to speak to an operator to get in line in the queue. So we're going to go to our question queue now. Our first questions come from Honor, and I believe these will be for Greg or Chris. So Honor asks, why does my landlord refuse to let us in when we have gas hydro in place and it's been cleaned? He also asks, or she asks, how many inspections does my apartment need to have once hydro and gas have been turned on? So I guess we'll start with Greg.
As far as the number of inspections, essentially there are two things that need to be confirmed. One is that the building meets minimum Alberta housing standards, the utilities are on. Obviously, we need electricity in the building to run the fire alarm systems and some of the other emergency systems in the building. As well, there could additionally be damage to the building that AHS needs to confirm because there are environmental impacts from floodwater being in the bottoms of buildings. So it's possible that only a portion of a building would be able to be occupied. Once AHS has done their review and Safety Codes has done their review and the owner of the building has provided any requested documentation, both AHS and Safety Codes will immediately contact the owner and inform them that tenants are okay to go in. I know myself, I had an email last night and I responded at 11:15 at night within 15 minutes of the email and notified the property manager that they were able to move people into 4 different apartment buildings down here at Clearwater. So we're responding as quickly as possible. We're not requiring permits for any of this. We're responding to on an as-call, as-needed basis and trying to expedite occupancy of these multifamily projects as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Greg. Again, *3 on your phone. We'd like to hear your questions, so please get into the queue. The next question comes live on the line from Renee. Renee, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to ask a question. So I have a concern about the state of our water treatment plant and the current boil water advisory we're now all under. It's been about 10 years or so ago, but it didn't seem that long ago when former Mayor Melissa Blake extolled the virtues of our water and wastewater treatment plant facilities, pointing to them as state-of-the-art infrastructure that all residents can take pride in. And yet here we are, now in the state that we're in. Media reports indicate the problem at our water treatment plant began on Monday, April the 27th, when the Athabasca River water flowed into an overflow pipe, causing river water to mix with drinking water. I don't understand how that's possible or what the root cause of this is. Simply put, my trust in the system is eroded. Many things can go wrong in the day-to-day operations of any municipality, but the safe delivery of clean drinking water and its effective treatment should be at the top of everyone's list. We do not want to see our region join.
Thank you so much for your question, Renee, and our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer will talk about the water.
Good evening, everyone. As far as potable water being our top priority, you're absolutely right, and that is exactly why the boil water advisory is in place. The cause of the high turbidity in the water was mixing of river water with our treated water that was distributed throughout our system, and that's exactly what we're working to resolve at this point. I shared with everyone yesterday that I have seen the water test results at the point of distribution, and rest assured, they are exactly what we expect them to be. Having said that, we still have work to do to make sure that our pipes are as clean as they were before the flood occurred. This was a 1 in 100 year flood on the Athabasca. We are learning a lot from this experience, and we'll be making adjustments to ensure that if this occurs again in the future, that our infrastructure will be even better than what it is today.
Thank you so much. Again, *3 on your phone if you would like to get your question into our question queue. Our next question comes live on the line from Jan. Jan, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. And I, too, would like to thank the Red Cross for all of their hard work during this situation and the fires. It's amazing how much you guys do for us. I'm wondering how our Royal Canadian Legion is doing. I haven't heard any more about that, and there's nothing on their website.
Thank you so much for your question, Jan. Mayor Scott has an update on that.
Hi, Jan. I was down there 2 days ago, and they were hoping for 6 volunteers. They ended up with 25. We cleaned out the bottom of the Legion, and from what I've seen, they're still cleaning it out. I had a friend with me down there who was continuing to clean out yesterday and today, so they're still working to clean out the bottom of the Legion. They had a fairly robust insurance policy, which is rare in this town, so they were not in as bad a position as many residents. So I'm feeling pretty confident. I know the leadership of the Legion very well, and they couldn't have better leadership and better members. So I think they're going to recover in a strong way. They do have a huge deductible, which is not uncommon, even if you have good insurance. So there's that challenge. But with what I saw, I'm feeling confident that they will recover and be as strong as ever.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and thank you so much, Jan, for your question. Again, *3 on your phone if you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists this evening. Our next question comes live on the line from Nabahat. I apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask the question, and you pronounced my name right. So my question was, we have been evacuated due to flooding. And our unit is right by the river in Water Edge condos. They're asking us to stay out of the building for another 3 months. There is no electricity, nothing there. It's pitch black. But the problem is our insurance is not covering the flooding. And now that we have to pay mortgages and condo fee on top of that, we have to pay the rent for another home that we have to arrange for 3 months. So at this point, I'm kind of like really in a, I have this financial crunch at this point. I really appreciate the help that we are getting from Red Cross, but I really wanted to ask if there's anything else that anybody else going to do for us, like for people who are not covered under insurances for 3 months of a period, because it's not, about a week or two. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your question. So first I'm going to ask Jen from Red Cross to weigh in here. And then Rob, I might have you weigh in just to discuss what could be done from an insurance perspective. Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Nabahat. Nabahat, please make sure that you've registered with the Canadian Red Cross so that we can provide you with the $600 per household that we just announced this evening. When you talk to our team, if you could also have a private and confidential situation awareness of what your family is facing, that would be great for us to note, and then we might be able to refer you into some of the really strong social profits here in Fort McMurray area, as well as other provincial resources. So please talk to our team, and the number is 1-800-863-6582. Please call my team.
Thank you, Jen. And Rob, would you be able to assist on the insurance aspect?
Yes, I certainly can, and thank you for the call, Nabahat. I want to start off by saying our thoughts are absolutely with all of the people of the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo who have been impacted by these floods. Certainly Mayor Scott and Scott Davis, Director of Emergency Management, Jamie Doyle to MLA Goodridge and MLA Yao. They've been working tirelessly for all the people to do everything that they need to do to get people back into their homes. Flood insurance, it's fairly new to the market, and it has limited availability in flood-prone areas. Certainly the insurance industry, for those that do have coverage, there are people on the ground right now, and they're connecting with their policyholders. They're doing what they can, working with the homeowners and the people whose businesses and vehicles have been damaged as well. Every time a severe weather event happens, it just reinforces the need for us to be better prepared. As an organization, we're working with governments at all levels and consumers and stakeholders to help build more resilient communities across Canada. Now, this coverage is new. There's about 13 insurers that offer coverage in Alberta, but coverage for those in high-risk areas is either unaffordable or just not available. So we're working towards a national action plan on flooding so that we can get to a point where overland flood insurance is available and affordable for every Canadian, and particularly we see many areas in Alberta that are in high-risk areas. So that work will be continuing, and we will be having those conversations, and we're very hopeful that we will get to a point where everyone can have that affordable and available coverage.
Thank you, Rob. And I believe Mayor Scott has some information about DRP funding.
Sure. It's going to give you an update on DRP. So that's Disaster Recovery Program. It's meant to assist people for uninsurable losses. And generally, overland flooding it's not always, but generally it's an uninsurable peril. So based on history and precedent, I'm feeling very confident that there's going to be an announcement from the provincial government. Now, it's cost shared between the provincial government and the federal government. But we, as a mayor and council, I've had 3 conversations this week on telling them that I believe we deserve to be approved for this program. I spoke to the Premier about being approved for this program. It will not restore everybody to their pre-flood condition. What it'll do is it'll put you in a functional condition. So it'll help. It's not going to put you where you were, but that's something that I believe should be announced in the next little bit. I'm hopeful. So keep an eye out for that. So that'll help you out to some extent. It's residents and businesses. So it should, and potentially there's going to be advance payments made up to 50% of what they determine as your pre-functional condition. So it's not going to fully restore you, but it's going to put you in a pre-disaster functional condition. So just keep an eye out for that. That'll be called DRP, or the Disaster Recovery Program. That's from the province, but it's cost shared with the federal government. We are also going after the federal government for assistance as well. So keep an eye out for that assistance as well.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Again, *3 on your phone if you wish to ask a question of one of our panelists. Our next question comes live on the line from Teresa. Teresa, your line is open. Please go ahead.
I was mentioning to the Hello?
Hi, Teresa. Sorry, go ahead. You were just cut off at the beginning there. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just asking what is the problem that our seniors in the Arabesca House downtown, how come they're not allowed in to get their belongings and their important paperwork and all that stuff? And there's a sign on there that if you enter, you'll be prosecuted. And on the gate, I guess. And one of our friends went yesterday and said that the outside door was unlocked. He didn't go in, but why would the door be unlocked to that building if we don't know if there was anybody in there? He didn't go in, so it shouldn't. It's always supposed.
Thank you so much for your question, Teresa. I'll ask Safety Codes Greg to maybe just explain why that building could potentially be closed.
It should be locked if they are not allowed in.
Yeah, that property is managed by Wood Buffalo Housing, and we've been in contact with them, and certainly we can reach out to them again and make sure that the property is secure. But I know that the items that are being checked over and required to be in place are moving forward as we speak, and I would expect it to be open very, very shortly. But certainly we'll find out about the security of the building.
Thank you, Greg. Again, *3 on your phone if you wish to ask a question of one of our panelists. Our next question comes live on the line from Jason. Jason, your line is open. Please go ahead. Jason, can you hear us?
Yeah, sure can.
Go ahead with your question, please.
I'm just wondering when they plan on actually finishing the berm in the lower town site.
Thank you for your question, Jason. Our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Matthew Huff, will take that.
Thank you for your question. The flood mitigation program will continue for the next few years. So that, I believe, is the berm that you're referring to. For more information on this, and I haven't had a chance this week to point residents to this information, but it is surely top of mind right now. Take a look on our website, www.rmwb.ca, and under the engineering or on the engineering page, you'll see the flood mitigation program listed. You'll see the phases of the work and the expected timelines. Having said that, the flood mitigation program is identified on our shovel-ready lists that have been provided to both the federal government and the provincial government, and so we are ready to move ahead even quicker should funding come through. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Jason, for the question. Our next question comes live on the line from Kyle. Kyle, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for answering my question. Just wondering, I've noticed due to not only COVID-19 but also the flood that all the grocery stores up in Timberley, Gregoire, and as well as Thickwood, there's so many people in those stores due to the flood. So I'm wondering if maybe you have a rough estimate or like a timeline when the downtown stores will be back up and going.
Thank you for your question, Kyle. Kevin of the Wood Buffalo Economic Development Corporation, could you take that one?
Yes. So I just want to get an understanding of what you're looking for. Could you just ask me that once more?
He was just asking if we have any sort of a timeline for stores to open in the downtown area.
Yeah, so that's a really complex question because it's also laid on to COVID-19. So there's many timelines that'll take place. So if we think of the 4 stages of reopening that the province is undertaking, that's one aspect of stores reopening. And then, of course, each store is affected differently. So some stores have already reopened and relocated. As far as the timeline to going back to their previous location, that is a business decision that each business owner is going to make. Some may decide not to return to their previous location. Others may decide to take advantage of opportunity for construction to change the way their operation works. So that's a function of the decisions of each of the business owners. So I don't think that there's one solid answer as to when things will get back to normal. In fact, I'm not even sure that normal ever will look like pre-COVID and pre-flood. All that in mind, the bigger stores that we're all tracking, of course, Rona is up and running. Home Hardware is has opened in a temporary location. The Brick is about to open in another temporary location, and that's kind of what's going on right now. I hope that helps to answer.
Thank you, Kevin. And I've just been told that both Safeway and Superstore have opened, so those are 2 options for you downtown. Thank you so much for your question. Again, *3 on your phone if you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists. Our next question comes live on the line from Mike. Mike, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's a 2-part question in regards to the flooding. It's to my understanding the city Wood Buffalo or township knew and asked for proposals in 2017 for the flooding that you guys had probably knew was going to come had we had a bad winter, and submitted proposals and nothing was acted upon. And the second part, once again referring to our fires and a secondary exit of a back road, and that even concerns the flood. Had that ice blown up that bridge, us up here in Kimberley and Thickwood, we would have been stranded, literally an island. So, I mean, why is there nothing being done on that secondary route that would help us not only for that, but for supplies as well?
Thank you for your question, Mike. Deputy Chief Administrative Officer Matthew Huff will take that.
Yeah, so to speak to what has been done so far, there has been just under $200 million put into the flood mitigation program. It's not known by many, but the work that's been undertaken on the Clearwater Drive is actually part of the flood mitigation program itself. You may think it's a road, but underneath is actually a berm set at the 1 in 100 level. Speaking of the 1 in 100 level, the bridge is designed at that level, and we saw the Athabasca reach that point this year, and the bridge performed exactly as designed. The secondary egress road is another major project on our capital plan. This year there will be $5 million spent to move 2 communications towers and prepare for the construction of that road. Having said that, Mayor and Council, of course, will be contemplating the capital budget as they do every year to determine our next steps. So again, please take a look at the flood mitigation program on our website. There's quite a bit more information there about its history and its plan and the plan we have in place right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And Mayor Don Scott has a few words as well.
Sure. I couldn't agree with you more about a secondary evacuation route. It would come into play for a lot of reasons. No one's fought harder for that evacuation route probably than a gentleman named Marty Giles, who owns the Ford dealership here. He came to council and said that should be the number one option that mayor and council fights for with the province. So the city does not build a highway, it is the province. So it's something I would encourage everyone in this community to talk to their MLAs about. We have been lobbying for it for years. It's called the East Clearwater Highway. It would be a secondary route and would exactly address the concern that you had, plus a lot of other concerns. It would shorten the timelines to several oil sand sites. It would provide a lot of help to this region. So East Clearwater Highway, if you Google it, you'll see the long history of how we've been fighting for it. It's not been accepted by the province as something that should be funded. The discussions I've had, it's incredibly expensive. It's about $2 billion. So that's been the barrier at this point. But talk to your MLAs about it. Talk to the province about it. If you ever have the chance to send them a letter, say that you think it should be funded, because your mayor and council certainly think so.
Thank you so much, Mayor Scott and Matthew. Again, if you would like to have your important questions put into our queue, please press *3 on your phone and you'll be directed to an operator who will take your question. Our next question comes live on the line from Bob. Bob, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to voice one of my concerns. Well, it's not really a concern, but I was very encouraged to go and do some volunteering for Samaritan's Purse that is in town here, set up at the Fort City Church parking lot. Unfortunately, for the last few days, we've only had a handful of volunteers, and we supply all the tools, all the personal protective equipment required, onboarding to help those that are in real need right now. There's some just awful floods out there with people who need help. If people would like to volunteer, I just encourage them to sign up to be at the Fort City Church area where Samaritan's Purse is at 7:30 a.m. We've only had a dozen people show up on the first day, and about the same on the second or third day.
Thank you for your question, Bob. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The question is, I'm wondering how we could get the word out that we really need volunteers. Is there anything that the city? Is there anything that the city can do with advertising to help us out here?
Thanks, Bob. Mayor Scott will address that.
Yeah, and thank you so much for volunteering. It's people like you that make this community strong, and I'm so happy that you did that. Really, I've been trying to call this community to arms to help those who are in difficulty during this time. But on a more immediate level, I called Chantel Beaver today, contacted her. She's with Fuse Social. Fuse Social runs a volunteer program, and I stopped in and saw Samaritan's Purse. They told me the same thing. They need volunteers. And just as you said, they can do a lot of good work. They supply everything, just as you said. And they promised me, the people from Fuse Social promised me they're going to reach out to Samaritan's Purse today. So that just happened about 3 hours ago. So there should be some contact there, and they're doing a call out for volunteers for Samaritan's Purse. But anyone who's listening on this call, if you're not sure where to volunteer, you just heard the call right there, 7:30 to 7:40 at the Fort City Church, or you can sign up to be a volunteer at wbvolunteers.ca, and let's get as many people out there as possible. There are a lot of people who still need help.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Again, *3 on your phone if you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists this evening. Our next question comes from several individuals. So Carrie, Renee, we apologize, I believe you got cut off earlier this evening, and Alyssa. But they're all asking if council will insist on a formal inquiry so that the public can understand exactly what happened. So Mayor Scott, would you be able to address that, please?
Yeah, it was spoken about last night at the council meeting. We asked that a review be done and made public, and our CAO can speak to exactly what's going to happen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question. And you're very right. An investigation will ensue, so we can understand what happened and certainly learn from any of these lessons that will come from that. So it's currently underway, and we'll take some time to do it correctly and figure out exactly what happened.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Mayor Scott. Again, *3 on your phone if you would like to ask a question this evening. Our next question comes from several individuals, but it's all about pretty much the same thing. So Tanya, Helen, Renata, and Mark, they're all wondering about the boil water advisory. And if there's a shutoff valve or an overflow valve, was it a case of human error? And why is it taking so long to lift the boil water advisory? So we'll ask our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Matthew Huff, to take that.
Thank you for the question. And as per CAO's statement and the Mayor's comment, this is exactly what our investigation is intended to reveal. And we will be reporting publicly to Council on that. As far as the length of time it's taking to lift the boil water advisory, I reported on needing 120 days of work. However, there are several phases of that work that can proceed concurrently. So I have committed that there will be a circulation of that phased timeline. We are looking at numbers now that suggest the length of the total amount of work could be done within 60 days. So we are still working hard on ensuring that that's going to do everything that needs to be done and will satisfy the regulators, Alberta Health Services, so that the boil water advisory can be lifted at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And just wanted to make a correction to that website earlier for volunteers. The website is woodbuffalovolunteers.ca. That's, again, woodbuffalovolunteers.ca. Our next question comes from Andy. Andy says, my car was towed after the flooding. Do I have to pay for the towing and storage fee? Is there any way the RMWB can waive these fees? Jamie Doyle, our Chief Administrative Officer, will take that.
Thank you for the question. It's very timely. We were just discussing this today, and the municipality will be covering that cost. However, if you already paid, hold on to your receipt. Also, for those listening, as we work through this process, I'd encourage you to pick up your vehicle as soon as you can to keep the fee as low as possible.
Thank you, Jamie. And again, we want to hear your important questions, so please press *3 to speak to an operator to get in line. We have about 20 minutes remaining on the call. Our next question comes from Louis and Michael, and they're looking for an update on the DRP funding for the province. One's asking if there's a plan to buy out waterways, and the other one is asking if they don't have insurance. So we'll start with Jamie, and then we'll go on to Mayor Scott.
Thank you, Louis and Michael, for your questions. I'll take a stab at some of it, and Mayor Scott will supplement as he sees fit. We'll talk about the DRP application, which we have made to the provincial government, and of course, Mayor and Council have spoken to it last night in Council, encouraging the provincial and federal government to, as quickly as possible, make some funds available. As for the buyout, honestly, through the planning development group and our work, we're looking at redevelopment of all those areas impacted with some development options, and we're leaving no stone unturned of what we're going to do. So we will garner those options, present them to Council for some consideration.
And it's Mayor Scott here, and I just wanted to add that exactly what was said is exactly right. We brought this up at Council last night, but I've talked to the Premier about the DRP program. The Deputy Mayor Allen and I have had 3 conversations along with the CAO with the provincial government about the program. We have been fighting tooth and nail to make sure that that program is instituted for our region. I believe, based on history and precedent, that we should qualify, and it'll be a huge benefit to our residents. So I would be very shocked if it is not invoked for our region, and we're going to keep fighting for it. And last night it was discussed at Council. We're following up with a letter to the Premier, and we're also contacting the federal government to see what assistance they can give, although DRP is cost share between the province and the federal government.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and thank you, Jamie. Again, *3 on your phone if you would like to ask a question this evening. Our next question comes from Deb. Deb asks if there is a timeline when gas and power will be connected on Fontaine Crescent. Maybe Greg or Chris could weigh in about the process for that.
So as far as actually getting gas into the lines to the buildings, the municipality does not control that. That is up to ATCO. Once services are provided to the building, those buildings have been assessed as requiring electrical work to complete to get power hooked up. So combined with another question I have here about whether individuals make the request to the municipality or the condo board, the condo board will retain a contractor. The contractor will be the permit holder, and it is always the permit holder who calls safety codes to come and do the inspection. As soon as we've done the inspection, the report is generated and given to the contractor, who would then provide it to ATCO if a particular utility needs to be connected.
Thank you, Greg. Again, star 3 on your phone if you wish to ask a question of one of our panelists this evening. Our next question comes from John and Connie, and I'm guessing that they probably weren't on when Jen gave her exciting news. So, Jen, could you reiterate what you announced earlier in the call?
Thanks, Jill. Hi, John. Hi, Connie. Effective tomorrow, households that have registered with the Canadian Red Cross and who were in the mandatory evacuation zone in Fort McMurray area will qualify and receive $600 one-time funding for reentry support per household. So, John, Connie, please make sure that you've registered with the Canadian Red Cross by calling 1-800-863-6582. If you've already done so, you will receive an electronic funds transfer email from us. And if you do not have an email with us in your registration process, we will be calling you. But we're advising that if you receive a call from the Canadian Red Cross, please make sure that we validate your registration number that you have with us before you engage. And if you're unsure, please call us back at 1-800-863-6582 for your own protection. And we're pleased to be able to provide $600 per household. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. And both of those individuals were wondering what Red Cross was doing in the community. I forgot to indicate that. My apologies. So our next question comes from Scott and Pat, and they ask, will our water bills be waived during the boil water advisory, and if the city will be offsetting our energy bill? So I'll ask Jamie to take that.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Scott and Pat, for the questions. As I mentioned a few times, whether it was through our Facebook Live sessions or these town halls, or even council, we are looking at all options through our billing processes to ease the constraint or ease the burden on those residents impacted by this flood. And this does include a water bill reduction. And the GOA has also, or the government of Alberta has also deferred energy bills until July.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and hopefully that answers your question. Our next question comes from Michelle, and Michelle says, I live in Ptarmigan Park and was told that we need to get a pressure test on our gas at our own expense to get the gas turned back on. We did not get impacted. No water reached our lot, so why are we required to do this? I'm going to see if maybe Greg can explain the process, and hopefully that will answer your question. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone from ATCO here this evening. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Depending on what happened with the gas line, just because your gas lines weren't perhaps damaged or your meter regulator above the ground wasn't damaged, doesn't mean that there wasn't water that made its way into the lines. And so ATCO, in coordination with safety codes, does require in a lot of cases that an air test be done on the line. The air test is done by the contractor who will coordinate with safety codes to get that coordinated and set up and viewed, and then confirm to ATCO that the line can be hooked up. That is something that the property owner and their contractor is a cost that they are required to bear.
Thank you, Greg. Again, if you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists, we have about 10 minutes remaining. Please hit *3 on your phone to get your question into the queue. Our next question comes live on the line from Henry. Henry, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I've been trying to access the Alberta government's thing for that $1,250, and I have difficulty. The person that was I discussed it with, and she worked with me. She couldn't get it through. My name was put on a list. I haven't received a call back, and so I'm just wondering how I can and what's my options now.
Thank you for your question, Henry, and I'm sorry to hear that you've been having difficulties. Mayor Scott will address that for you.
I know that initially they were having some difficulties, and the minister responsible for that assured me that it had been fixed. So the website for that, and you might already be aware of this, but is Alberta / sorry, I'm going to repeat that. It's alberta.ca/emergency. So that should be giving you a link. I know that they had a couple of options in there. There was a way to get a direct deposit. There was also a way to phone in, I think, if you had difficulties with that method. I think if you're still having difficulties getting that, I would suggest you contact your MLAs, depending on which MLA you might want to deal with, but MLA Layla Goodrich should be able to assist with that process.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Our next question comes live on the line from Pauline. Pauline, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hello. Thank you very much for this evening. My question is, people that have reverse osmosis water filters, just wondering what kind of bacteria do we have in the water, and do we still need to boil the water after we've run it through the reverse osmosis?
Thank you for your question, Pauline. Deputy Chief Administrative Officer Matthew Huff will take that.
Thank you for the question. Our advice on home-based treatment units remains the same because the quality and level of maintenance differs so greatly, and that is that before consuming, you should still boil your water. Having said that, I have spoken about the water test results, and there are no discernible bacteria at the point of distribution. We will be making those water test results available online for people to see in the coming days. But having said that, I want everyone to still take this seriously, to follow the boil water advisory as we work to ensure that our entire system is returned to its pre-flood state. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Again, *3 on your phone if you wish to ask a question. We've only got about 10 minutes remaining. Our next question comes live on the line from Arlene. Your line is open, Arlene. Please go ahead. Arlene, are you there? Okay, I will read the question for her. Arlene says she's in a condo and insurance is not providing support. Will housing be provided to people in this situation? Jamie can, I believe, talk about what's being provided for people who are displaced, and then maybe Jen, we can reiterate again.
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned in my opening statements, yesterday we announced temporary accommodations have been extended for those residents whose homes are A, not safe to occupy, B, do not have utilities restored, or C, do not have access to their multifamily homes. So while I don't know your particular situation where and what for that matter, if you call Pulse and get in touch with somebody at Planning Development, they can certainly help as well.
Thank you, Jamie. And Jen?
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Arlene. Arlene, please call my team at 1-800-863-6582 if you're finding yourself in a situation whereby you are unable to stay where you are right now. We want you to be safe and well. With RMWB's announcement on lodging and housing support extension beyond May 10th, my team is there to help make referrals to find you a safe place to be. And they are on the line from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. And Rob Dupree of Insurance Bureau of Canada, maybe you could give some information if people have questions about insurance issues?
Yes, and thank you very much, and appreciate the question. This is just a good reminder that for people living in condominium corporations, as a unit owner is responsible for your own unit. So you'd be responsible for your contents and whatever you would own in that unit. And then the condominium corporation broadly is responsible for the damages to the building and the common area. So a unit owner could have additional living expenses if they had the overland flood coverage on their policy. And essentially, the additional living expenses are available if your home is damaged or if you're forced to evacuate due to something that your policy covers. Now, it is optional, and depending on where the condo was, they may not have had that option to purchase it. But I just want to share a reminder to everyone that Insurance Bureau of Canada does have a consumer information center. We can be answering general insurance questions. We have a lot of information and resources on our site at ibc.ca. And the phone number, if people want to just jot this down, it's 1-844-227-5422. So the number again, 1-844-227-5422, or you can reach out to us by email at askibcwest@ibc.ca. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Rob. We are going to extend our time tonight just a little bit. We have quite a few questions that we're hoping to get through. Our next questions are in regards to business owners, so I'll ask Kevin to weigh in on this, but Nimesh and Elizabeth are asking if the small business owners in the downtown area are entitled to the $1,250 being given out by the government of Alberta, and they're wondering if there are any other additional financial supports available. So Kevin, could you address that, please?
Yes, thank you. So the funding from the government of Alberta is intended for, my understanding is intended for residences. Perhaps someone on the panel can correct me if I'm mistaken. So as far as businesses, I'm not certain of whether or not that's an eligibility. I am aware of the programming discussion around disaster assistance for businesses, and we are seeking additional support as well, and et cetera. The announcement from the province is like hot off the press, so I simply haven't had a chance to analyze that just yet.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Our next question comes from Deb. Deb says, I'm concerned on the security of our home. Do we need to be worried about looting? I'll ask Jamie, our CAO, to address that.
Thank you for the question. We were cognizant and are cognizant of the anxiety and vulnerability of some of these properties for looting. RCMP has increased their patrolling throughout the flood-affected areas. And as I understand it, they're doing patrols about every 10 to 15 minutes. However, the non-emergency RCMP line is 780-788-4040. Should you have any specific concerns, and of course, emergency is always 911.
Thank you, Jamie. Our next question comes from Dawn. Dawn, and not our mayor, says, are these out-of-town contractors allowed to work here without a local business license? Why is there not an enforcement to use local businesses? Mayor Scott?
Yeah, this is something that's been top of mind, and we talked about it at council last night. There was a motion passed on exactly this issue, so you'll see that in the news, or if you take a look at last night's council meeting and the outcomes of that, there was a motion that basically talked about needing to have a business license 90 days before a SOL is declared if you're going to do work related to the SOL. So that was a motion that was passed last night. It still needs, there's still some other steps in relation to it. but that's top of mind. What I've been telling people over and over and over again is do not hire an ambulance-chasing contractor from out of town to do work. There is no need for it. If you have insurance and you're going through an insurance provider, then use the contractor you pick. You have the discretion to do that. What I'm concerned about is these people who do not have a vested interest in this community. They come in, they do shoddy work, they disappear, or they take your deposit and disappear. I can't control who everybody hires in this community. The municipality has taken the step that we are hiring local. We put out a statement to that effect, wherever it's legal to do so. I would encourage every resident to take that exact same approach.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and I believe Chris Booth from Planning and Development can add to that.
Thank you very much for the question. And what I can offer is that, as Mayor Scott has alluded to, Planning and Development is working very hard to bring forward a report to do exactly what Mayor Scott has identified. And furthermore, what I can offer is that certainly all contractors are required to obtain business licenses, whether resident or non-resident. And for those who are seeking local options for contractors, again, I would reiterate what Kevin Weidlich mentioned earlier with respect to the Rebuild Local YMM website. That does identify a list of contractors for those who are seeking local contractors. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I just want to remind our panelists on the phone to please mute your phone while it's not in use. Our next question comes from David, and David is wondering how we collect our mail. So I'll ask Jamie, our Chief Administrative Officer, to take that.
Thanks, David, and a very good question, and one we receive quite often. As I understand it, the mail service has resumed, although you can expect delays as there's quite a backlog through their sorting collection centers. However, if you want to go to rmwb.ca, go to our flood recovery page, there's some contact information there to contact Canada Post directly, and that they should be able to help you with the best details.
Thank you, Jamie. And with a few minutes remaining, our next question comes from Thomas, live on the line. Thomas, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Yes, I was curious about any kind of relief kind of thing for the people that are renting downtown that are displaced and having to pay rents outside of the area at the region. And if there is a campaign to live outside the region as well as paying for the rents there, I'm just wondering if there's going to be some kind of relief for that.
Thank you for your question, Thomas, and I'll get Jen to reiterate the Red Cross information.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Thomas. So, Thomas, please register with the Canadian Red Cross by calling 1-800-863-6582 between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. We are supporting individuals who have been evacuated due to the flooding event here in Fort McMurray and who are outside the region as well. Right now, we understand that people have gone to see family, friends, and be with supportive neighbors outside of the region, and we are here to support as well. The $600 that will be released tomorrow upon registering and validating your ID and that you are an evacuated community member from Fort McMurray and the flooding area, we will then do an electronic funds transfer to you, or we'll find another way to get you $600 to support. Thanks.
And I could just supplement a bit. I'm not sure exactly what you were describing, but if there was a resident who didn't register at an evacuation center and they went down to Edmonton or another place and got accommodations there, such as a hotel, then the motion that was brought last night dealt with that issue, and it will be covered. Now, it's only covered until you can get back into your property. So and I would encourage people who are in that situation to register with the Red Cross, because that's how it's going to be coordinated.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. And Jen, just want some clarification. Somebody had asked that they had registered at the Casman Center, and they're wondering if this counts as being registered for Red Cross or if there's a separate registration. So could you elaborate on that, please?
Thanks, Jill. We're encouraging, if you did register through the drive-through registration process at the Casman Center, please call the Red Cross. We want to validate your registration So the number is 1-800-863-6582. And then we can talk about your specific situation. And if you have an email that you can share with us, we can then begin the process tomorrow for an electronic funds transfer of $600 for your household for support in reentry tomorrow. So just call the number. I think it's best to double check. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. Our next question comes live on the line from Martin. Martin, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My question is, can we, as the end user of the water, can we help in any way by either using more water or reducing water usage to help with the flushing the lines out?
Thank you for your question, Martin. Our Deputy Chief Administrator, Matthew Huff, will take that.
Thank you for that question. It's quite timely. You will be able to help. As crews undertake the phases of work, they will be doing so by community. And when that takes place, you will likely see a notice left on your doorstep asking for your assistance to run your water for a specific length of time. So in short, yes, you will be able to help. At this time, there really isn't a good reason to do that. So please stay tuned and help us out where you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And we are on to our final question, and it comes live on the line from Allie. Allie, your line is open. Please go ahead. Allie, are you there? Please make sure your phone isn't on mute.
Yes, hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, I've been living in the downtown core here for almost close to 20 years. For years, they've been always talking about rezoning and redeveloping, and that's things of that nature. Although I was always against it, has there been any discussions through council or planning and development, obviously based on these disasters that we've been getting, and specifically the floods and the state of the economy, that there would be any sort of expropriation where, the municipality or the government would help to obviously building berms, maybe building up the land, driving in new business into the downtown core, things like that?
Thank you for your question, Allie, and I believe Jamie Doyle, our Chief Administrative Officer, will take that.
Thank you for the question, Allie, and thank you for calling in. It's something we've been giving a lot of thought to, specifically over the last few days, of course. We've been looking at a number of options, which we're preparing a report for Council's consideration. It would include such things as you mentioned. It's quite a task to go through and talk about redevelopment and understand what we've done so far, specifically where flood mitigation is concerned. So we're compiling all of that information, creating a report, and bringing it to Council for their consideration.
Thank you so much, Jamie. So that is all the time that we have for this week's Town Hall. Before we wrap up this evening, Mayor Scott will just give a few words. Mayor Scott?
Thanks very much for that. So since we began tonight's Town Hall, I did get an update that we had a question early on about Arabasca House, and I contacted the leadership, and they were able to give me a date. So they're aiming for May 10th to get seniors back in there. So I know that there was one person who was concerned about that, so that's a bit of an update there. There is a more challenging situation with the townhouses on Gordon White because they were damaged. So the Gordon White properties are going to be longer, but Arabasca House, they're aiming for May 10th. I want to thank the Red Cross again. They've been amazing, as always. We are certainly grateful for them standing at this community's side, as they have so often in the past and currently are again. We're doing a Facebook Live at 2 p.m. tomorrow, so just go to the municipal Facebook and you'll be able to join that. And you can see our past Facebook Lives where we've talked about all the issues that have been discussed tonight. If you want information about what's happening with the flood or other issues, go to rmwb.ca, and that's the best place you're going to find information. Thank you to all the volunteers who are coming together and supporting your neighbors. It's a very difficult situation. We are going to have more information as it becomes available, and the one thing we're going to keep working hard for is DRP funding. I'm optimistic, but we got to keep Your mayor and council is fighting very hard for it. So stay on the RMWB.ca website for information. Stay strong and take care, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. We recognize that due to high call volumes, you may not have had your question addressed. So you can email us at townhall@rmwb.ca. And as Mayor Scott indicated, we will also be doing that Facebook Live tomorrow at 2 p.m. If you are joining us online and you would like to be added to our call-out list, please call Pulse at 780-743-7000 and provide your phone number. Thank you to our panelists for taking the time to engage with residents this evening. Our next town hall is 1 week from tonight, May 14th at 6:10 p.m. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe, stay strong, and have a wonderful evening.